Hey, what is up, guys? Tyler here with Secureteam. Well, today is a very exciting and special day because we have with us a man who has, for years now, spearheaded the investigation into the mysterious disappearances of thousands of people that have, in many cases, vanished without a trace and under some very mysterious circumstances throughout our national parks and forests. We have with us today Mr. Dave Paulides, who is the author of the well-known book series called The Missing 411, and a new film that has just become available online of the same name, and that is already breaking viewership records on iTunes and Amazon. So I want to give a big thanks to Mr. Paulides for coming on Secureteam today and giving us his 2 cents about what is going on in our national parks, his work and investigations into said cases, and the explosive new film that has just come out and that all of you are going to want to see. So thank you for coming onto the channel. It's a big deal, and I know my fans have been extremely excited about it. We're about to hit 1 million subscribers, and in all of my 5 years of running this channel, I think one of the most fascinating topics that I have gotten requests from viewers to make videos on is, of course, the Missing 411 series. So for those of you who may not know who you are, what you've done, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in law enforcement before you got into your research of the Missing 411?
Yeah, I was living predominantly in the Bay Area of California, and I was doing some peripheral work after I retired from law enforcement. I spent 20 years as a police officer, and I got a master's degree from the University of San Francisco. But I always had an interest in the outdoors, lived a life fishing mostly in the Sierras and up through the Cascades of Oregon and Washington. And I was doing some research on a topic, and I was in a national park, and a couple rangers were following me around. And at the end of the night, I went back to my room that was off the park property, get a knock on the door, and it's one of those rangers. And he says, "Hey, we knew who you were, and we knew your background, and we knew you did some really good research, and you've written some really great things, and we wanted to talk to you about something." And he came in and he told me about that he and his friend had worked at a series of national parks over the previous 20 years, 15 years, and they had worked missing person cases on the park property. And they kind of compared their notes and their concerns. And the reality of it is that they thought that these people disappeared in areas that were a little odd. And the first 7 to 10 days of disappearance, there was a lot of press and a lot of visibility to the topic. A lot of people committed to resources. And after that period of time, everything dropped off and there was nothing done. And when they later tried to find out what happened, or they tried to get reports, et cetera, they were even stonewalled at certain levels, and they couldn't find any information. And they were concerned because of the numbers of people that were disappearing and what they thought was the lack of follow-up and the lack of research into what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that something ought to be done. And so over the period of time, I met with both guys and both rangers, and they eventually told me that the same story. As I was leaving that area the next day, I talked to some people and friends of mine in law enforcement, and I told them what I heard, and I said, "Hey, see if you can find if there's anything to this." Later on, they contacted me and said, "Wow, Dave, there really is something to this, in that there's a lot of people missing in national parks from various areas." It's kind of how it all got started. Pursuant to that, I filed a series of Freedom of Information Act requests against the Park Service to kind of kick the research off, because they had the largest contingent of federally trained law enforcement officers in the United States, and that's the federal park police. And the National Park Police are federally trained law enforcement officers trained at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Really, really highly trained men and women that are smart people, and they know how to do their job. And when I filed against them for a list of missing people in their jurisdiction, I got a call back from an attorney asking me why I wanted that information, which is a really strange call because according to FOIA, they can't use whatever reason you want something as a determination on if you get it.
Right.
I explained that to him, and he said, "Oh, no, 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 we're not trying to obstruct you in getting it. We just wanted to know why you wanted it." And I said, "I'm just doing research." And he said, "Well, we don't have any list of missing people." And I said, "What?" And he says, "Well, we don't have any list of missing people." I said, "You've got federally trained law enforcement officers, and on your website, you have multiple lists. So I know you know how to keep lists. One of your most lengthy lists is a list of movies taken on Park Service property. So you know the importance of this." And I reminded him that I don't think anyone could go into a small or medium-sized police department anywhere in the United States or Canada and talk to their chief and say, "Hey, could you supply us with a list of missing people in your jurisdiction?" And that chief wouldn't have that list on their desk within an hour.
Exactly.
And he says, "No, we don't have any lists." So, okay. So I went back and we talked about it, and we thought, well, maybe they're using some type of semantics to get around giving it to us. So we rewrote it, sent it back. A month and a half later, we get the same response from the same attorney. And I said, "Well, I'm a published author, and I'm going to use that exemption in FOIA and request that you get me those documents because there is that exemption there."
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Okay, I'll get back to you." So they get back to me and they tell me that my books aren't in enough libraries to qualify for this exemption.
Oh boy.
I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I know how to do research. And I looked that up and there's no such thing. And I got back to him and I said, "That doesn't exist."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, that's one of our internal policies." I says, "Okay. Then I'm going to request that you guys go out and get the information for me and we'll pay for it." So I want a quote. First quote is for a list of missing people from Yosemite National Park. And then I want a quote for your entire jurisdiction. He says, "Oh, we can do that." So a while later, I get a response back from the regional FYA coordinator out of Denver. And she tells me, "Well, for a list of missing people from Yosemite, it's going to cost you $34,000. And from our entire jurisdiction, it's going to cost you $1.4 million.
Wow. That is just... So did you get the impression that they were trying to stonewall you there a bit?
Well, I always like to bounce these things off people that are smarter than me, and I did. And they said, "Dave, there is no way in the world that National Park Service doesn't have this information." One of the guys that I lean on, who's an investigative reporter, is George Knapp, two-time Peabody Award-winning journalist out of Las Vegas. And he says, "Dave, they're just basically lying. You know that they have the information. They know they have it, and they're not going to you."
Oh, yeah. This is what they do. I mean, they are world-class bullshitters. Pardon my French. They are, if there's one thing they're good at, it's giving you the runaround, it's lying, it's manipulating. It's doing everything to hide the information. And, of course, they have a list. I mean, when we're talking about the feds or the NSA, I mean, they invented creating lists and putting you on them and recording, whether it be your phone calls, through your webcam. I mean, they have lists of every possible thing they could have a list for. So I don't buy that. And that is also very strange that they would be stonewalling you simply because you wanted a list of missing people. So that obviously arises the question, why would they be hiding this? And why is there this pushback? That's what's so mysterious about this. And, have you spoken with any park rangers or people who have maybe given you their idea or at least what their opinion is of what is happening to a lot of these people? Do they believe that it's more than people simply going missing? Because I'm sure we'll get a lot of skeptics out there, and I have in the past when I've spoken about the Missing 411 series and say, well, national parks are a dangerous place. People go missing. And so what would you say to those people? And what have you heard? I mean, some of these cases truly are creepy, unexplained, and it's just some of the craziest circumstances I've ever seen.
You bring up great points, Tyler, and I understand why people think the way they do because I'm somebody who loves national parks, and I I go to them all the time, and I go to them armed. I'm carrying a personal locator beacon, but I'm I go all the time, and I don't discourage people from going. But I think that the national parks, for some reason, don't want to give this information up. I don't know why,
Right.
but and this is something that as a group we've discussed, and I'm going on this almost 7 years of research. And when we first heard it, we believed that once this got visibility, the Park Service would immediately release the information. And why would they do that? Because it would take all of the steam out of this issue if they just did release it and there was nothing there.
Right.
I mean, if you think about the amount of press I've had over just this one topic, if the Park Service just fronted it out and put it on their website, we wouldn't have much to talk about.
Exactly.
Unless there's something weird there. And after all of these years and developing, just spending countless hours developing a list of people who are missing in national parks and forests in U.S., Canada, and 9 other countries, there's certain things that come out of that list that we can talk about later. But why they are doing this, I'm not gonna guess. I don't like to guess, but I do think it's very, very odd. And there's obviously obstruction going on. I know we'll talk about the movie later, but let me throw one thing out there is I know a couple of investigative journalists that have tried for years to get former Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, in an interview. And our film team, got an interview with him. And we told him it was about national parks. That's all we told him. And he said, sure. So he's an attorney in Denver. We went to his law offices. And I will tell the listeners that I personally believe that interview is very, very enlightening. If you watch his response when the director asks him about a list of missing people in the parks, and you look at his visual response and then listen carefully to what he says afterwards, I think it's pretty revealing.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely is. And, I had a chance to get an early screening of the film, and we'll get to that in a minute. But guys, this is one of the most awesome documentary films I've ever seen in my life. But back to what you were saying, yeah, I mean, of course, it's always good never to at least, try to speculate on things like this. On this channel, if you've looked at any of the videos I've posted, we talk about a range of crazy conspiracy, alternative news topics, from aliens, UFOs, to secret government cover-ups. I mean, I don't like the term conspiracy theorist. I prefer critical thinker, because there's a stigma that comes with conspiracy theorists. But basically, at its core, on this channel, I simply like to research into the unknown. And despite what you think about the whole UFO phenomenon and all of this stuff, it has been proven that the government has covered up things in the past. It is a fact that they spy on us, that they have pushed us into illegal wars based on lies. They have, manipulated facts. They have covered up things. And I think that this is a perfect topic to talk about, because it touches on so many of those key points where they are obviously hiding something. They are stonewalling investigative journalists, authors, basically anyone who is simply trying to get information about missing people, which you would think they would want to help. And again, you would think they would want to take steam, and if they really wanted to completely kill your work and have you never sell another book again, you're right, they would simply post a list. And I can't for the life of me understand why. It's obvious why. There is something going on here, in my opinion. And reading some of these reports, and your Missing 411 book series, which is fantastic. I've spoken about it multiple times on the channel, and to be honest, I really didn't even need to, because so many viewers have come to me, talking about it. They've read all of your books. They're on top of it. They love what you do. I don't know if you've seen, but a lot of well, obviously you have, but there's a ton of YouTube videos online now where people can go and listen to an audio version of your series. But some of the strange occurrences surrounding some of these disappearances, with people going missing, kids going missing and being found miles and miles away from where they originally disappeared, and at altitudes that are almost unbelievable, almost as if they were carried disappearing and then being found at the top of a mountain peak miles away, later being found in an area that had already been searched multiple times, having their clothes found, but the body never found. I mean, this has got to be strange to you. And, there's a ton of viewers of mine who believe that there is some sort of, I don't know, supernatural angle to this, a UFO angle. Are these people walking into portals? Is there something in the woods that's taking them? Is there some sort of government angle? Are they being snatched up? Is something going on? And, I'm sure a lot of these theories have gone through your head before. But yeah, it's just really strange, and it's got to be tough for you after doing all these years of research and still not getting a straight answer from the government or from the Park Service.
Well, of course it is, and it's frustrating. And I suppose I didn't cover completely the skeptics' concerns about what may be happening here, and parks are dangerous places, etc. So there's a specific vetting process that we go through before I'll even entertain a case. So if there's any mental illness, we probably won't touch it. If it's a voluntary disappearance, we won't touch it. If there's evidence of animal or human predation, we won't touch it. Now, how do we know about this? Because the search and rescue reports cover this. The search and rescue teams have groups that go in and look for animal predation, animal attacks, etc. They have teams that have expert trackers that can track people through the woods. When I give conference talks, I get people saying, well, it's pretty obvious that a mountain lion took the person. And a statistic that always just floors people is I ask people, so in the last 100 years, how many mountain lions or how many people have been killed by mountain lions in the U.S. and Canada? And I get guesses all the way from like 300 or 400, maybe 600, down as low as like, okay, somewhere between 50 and 100. Well, the truth is 16 people in 100 years. And so you got to kind of weigh that reality. And if a mountain lion attacks you or I, we're going to fight for our lives. There's going to be a scene there where there's blood, torn clothing, and they're either going to find you there or they're going to find pieces of you there, and they're going to find drag marks there. And then the canines that are brought in are going to be able to track your scent exactly to where the body is. So animal predation hasn't ever really been something that we've looked at hard in any of these cases. We'll vet it out if it needs to be, and we'll talk to search and rescue, and we'll talk to experts, and we'll run the opinions of others by. But the reality is animal predation is not an issue. Human predation on trails, I talk about that as well at conferences, and the reality is most of the people in, say, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, an extremely high percentage of those backpackers, et cetera, they're carrying guns. And if there's going to be human predation on these trails, then there's going to be a shootout because no one's taking me anywhere. And
right.
The reality is that eventually they're going to find your body. There's going to be other witnesses on the trail. There's people who see vehicles at the trailhead. They're going to be investigated. Human predation isn't really an issue either. So when you start to get down to the bottom line and you talk to search and rescue people, and I have talked to many have contacted me since the book's come out, and they say the same thing. Dave, all of us talk about this, and all of us are concerned because we don't understand why the canines can't find a scent on the trail, why our expert trackers can't find trails leading from the scene. It bothers us. And in the movie, we have comments from search and rescue people that will floor the viewer. But anyhow, that's kind of the background for the skeptics about how we vet the process and how we get to writing about the books. And in the cases I've written about now in 6 books, I've not had anybody come back and say, oh yeah, here's the evidence that it's an animal, or here's the evidence that it's human predation.
Right.
Because we've gone through that vetting process.
Right. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are self-proclaimed skeptics, and a lot of them, they're always skeptic about everything, and I think that skepticism, it's good to have healthy skepticism, but I think in a lot of people, skepticism is simply a way for them to deny something that they're afraid to talk about, that they don't understand. It frightens them, and so you automatically have to find a way or convince yourself as to what is happening, a logical explanation. And unfortunately, there are so many strange happenings around this world and in space that there are no explanations. And, that's what we've been discovering in our research here on the channel. And there's basically just a lot of strange stuff happening out there that cannot be explained. And yeah, you brought up a great point about the mountain lions, because yeah, and in the film you go into this, and it's just staggering. You would think that there would be hundreds or thousands of attacks by animals and lions, and there aren't. There are virtually none. And a lot of these people that go missing are trained. A lot of them went missing on the exact same trails and areas that they had been on 1,000 times before. And that is what is extremely creepy to me, is, the people who are trained, they knew what they were doing, and they were armed. And for them to just vanish like this, yeah, it really kind of makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when you talk about it. And I think that's why this is such a fascinating topic.
Tyler, let me throw in one thing here. A little bit ago, you talked about conspiracy theories. And unless somebody doesn't understand what I do and what I've written about, you will not hear conspiracy theory thrown around about anything I do. The reason being is I don't throw out any theories. When you read my books, you're going to read straight facts. And in the back of a couple of my books, I have tables that show something you addressed earlier on, the elevations that small children and adults have done, the distances that small children have been found. It's 12 miles over 2 mountain ranges in a day for a 2-year-old, et cetera, et cetera. And so trying to attack me by saying, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist is completely irrelevant. And I can easily overcome that with just a small amount of knowledge. And that is that a conspiracy theory by its own definition has a theory behind it. I don't have any theories. I don't promote any theories. I don't know what's happening. And I've said before, I probably have 20 different thesis-length documents written by people who have read the books about what they think happened. And the reality is that they're all different. They're all across the moon in their ideas, but there's not one theory that holds up if you read and you understand the books. Now, I know that there's hundreds of interviews with me out there, but if you listen to all those interviews, you're probably not going to touch on 3 to 5% of what's in the books. The reason for that is that in those stories that I've written about each one of these cases, I've gleaned the facts directly from the reports or news articles or online things, etc. But it all comes down to a real finite line behind what happened. And one thing that you've touched on already is that I touch on this heavily, is that the local reports on what happened are wrong probably 75% of the time. And when somebody disappears immediately, for some reason, the news wants to quell it and say everything's okay. It's just a normal blah, blah, blah. There's nothing real interesting about this, and they'll just cut it short. But when you look into the facts and when you get the reports and the parents say, well, my child was right next to me. I turned around and they were gone. And they bring in the canines and there's no scent trail, and they bring in the trackers and there's no tracks. And immediately law enforcement will start looking at the parents. And it's only after a little while that they realize, oh my gosh, the parents weren't involved because there was a whole group of people here. And all of a sudden the kid's gone. Well, that's an example. The press isn't going to report on it, but those were the facts that were in the reports. And it happens multiple times. So again, I'm just going to, in my books, I report the facts. I'm not coming up with any strange theories. I'm not even reporting on the theories. I'm just telling you that here's the tables of how far away some of these kids were found, how high elevation they went. And when I ask an audience of 400 or 500 people, how many people are parents here? They raise their hands. And I ask them, how far do you think your 2-year-old child would walk in the woods if you weren't around? People say, I don't think they'd walk anywhere. I think they'd lay down and take a nap because they'd be bored. Or some people say, oh, they'd walk a couple hundred yards. Some people say, oh, my 2-year-old may walk a quarter mile. And then you ask them, well, would your child walk uphill up that trail? And 90% of the parents say no. Well, and then you start to read the reports in my books. It's all contradictory to what common sense tells you.
So what, I'm sure, and I know my viewers you're going to want to know, but and I know you're probably not going to want to answer this, but what does the man behind the books think? I mean, honestly, man, what do you think is going on here? Or do you just prefer not to speculate and, you just want to leave it up to the viewers out there? Or is it like you said, there's just so many possibilities out there that it's useless to speculate?
So as far as being a policeman, I think I'm one of the more open-minded ones you're going to find. I mean, I've been a MUFON investigator for 14 years. I've looked into all types of unusual things. I try to keep a very open mind on a variety of issues. I read almost every email that comes through to our sites where somebody has a theory or an idea, and we'll stick an investigator on it if there's something valid. And to say that I won't look at it, I'll look at everything. And because sooner or later, I think there's something that's going to happen, and there'll be an epiphany on this that we'll understand it better. I've been at conferences and I've met some of these other speakers, and I think Richard Dolan is one of the smartest minds out there. And we were having a private conversation at one of these downtimes at a conference, and he says, Dave, he goes, there's so much intelligence out there in the world or in the universe that we don't understand and we couldn't comprehend, and we probably couldn't put a physical form around it, that to put an idea out there on what's happening on your books, that's insane. And, I listen to what these people say, and how am I going to say that they're wrong? I don't know.
And I think that's all we can ask. And you're right. I mean, it's all you can really do is look at these cases. You look at the facts, you look at the strange circumstances, and you just go with what you have. You go with the data you have, and you may not be able to come up with a concrete reason. I mean, it's a total mystery, but at least we have the reports, and we can look at these, and you can read through Mr. Paulides' books and his new film, and you just make your own determination. And I think that's basically all you can do, no matter what you're researching. When you're researching into something strange and unknown, you look at the data and you come up with your own ideas. But I appreciate that you are so open, and it is strange that to meet a person with so many years of law enforcement, to be such an open-minded individual toward these topics. That's a hard thing to find these days, and I've talked to so many people. It's
Well, Tyler, before you go on, I think your listeners respect you a lot. And after watching the movie, what came to your mind as what was going on?
you don't want to know my theories. I you know I watched that film, and I've been talking to my viewers about this, and I recently posted, a couple weeks ago, I posted a video about about the missing people in our national parks. And, of course, I mentioned you. You're the man who spearheaded this investigation and brought it to the forefront. And, I'm kind of like you. Like, I sit back, but I honestly think that in some of these cases, it seems as if people are being abducted. I mean, in some of these, it seems like people are being sucked up. They're vanishing from a spot. They're appearing miles away, sometimes at altitudes, especially in the cases of small children, where it would be virtually impossible for them to reach these altitudes, these rocky mountain tops. And in, again, cases where they're never seen again, the dogs can't pick up a scent. They find, it's basically like you fall off the face of the earth. There's not a shred of anything left of you for them to find or for the dogs to search for. And, I like to think of myself, despite the type of videos and the topics I make videos on, as a reasonable guy, an open-minded guy who looks at all of the angles. But I have to say, looking at a lot of these cases, not all of them, but a lot of them, it would appear to me that there is something happening that is not natural. Now, whether you want to link that to aliens, to UFOs, to a dimensional portal opening up, some sort of creature in the woods, or these people being snatched up by government spooks and taken to some base somewhere, something is happening. And I think that if anyone doesn't take that away after watching your new film or reading your books, then I think there's something wrong with them. And I think they've missed something, because I think that's all you can take away. After looking at the facts and looking at the cases, something unnatural is going on here. And, when you have the feds who are stonewalling you and are not keeping lists and are being hush-hush about this, I mean, there's only one conclusion you can come to. Something is going on. It's not natural. And, I think you do a great job of that in your film. And, that's my take on it. Something is happening here. I can't put my finger on it, but something unnatural. I'll just leave it at that. Unnatural, possibly supernatural, but, to each his own. We'll leave it up to the viewers to decide. By the way, I love the film. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of getting this film made?
Yeah. If you go back and you look at our YouTube site, and we only have one YouTube site, and you Google Can-Am Missing Project YouTube, and you'll find it. All the rest of the YouTubes out there with my name, they're all pirated, illegal downloads. Don't even watch them. There's only one. And several years ago, my son Ben was playing Division I hockey at Miami, Ohio, and we were sitting around after a game one time, and he'd always dabbled and done some good work with video, and we were talking, and he's been always a good supporter of my work, and he said, Dad, maybe we could reach a lot more people if we did a few videos on your work. And it was coming up on summer, and I said, oh, that'd be fun. So we went out there, and in Colorado, there's a healthy number of people missing that I've written about. And so we spent that summer going out and just filming Dave out in the woods at location, explaining the cases, and the response was overwhelming. I mean, people really liked them. And so as the time went on, Ben and I were talking, and he says, Dad, he says, maybe we ought to make a movie. And we talked about it, and the reality was that, Dad had thrown in 10, 20 grand, and we'd do it. And the more we got talking, we thought, well, heck, we'll go out, we'll go to Kickstarter, and well, we'll ask for 100,000 so we can bring on a good crew and we can do some healthy traveling and really go deep. Or we ended up getting 156,000, and that helped a lot. And we brought on a guy who had more experience than Ben. Ben left Miami, Ohio, and he's in a grad school program for film at USC right now. So it was Ben and another guy, and we hired a support crew and ended up traveling to various sites. And to get the movie made, we had to think of a way to join the cases. And I mean, there's a million ways to do this. And there's 59 geographical clusters of missing people. And we thought about, okay, well, maybe we could do just one cluster and highlight the disappearance in that. And we had a lot of lengthy discussions about it. We eventually ended up doing the movie about a group of young kids, children, that disappeared in various locations. And we traveled to those locations. We interviewed the parents, family members, witnesses, park rangers, news personnel, and statisticians, investigative journalists. And oddly enough, just before we started to film, I got an email from Les Stroud, Survivor Man. And Les said, hey, I read your books. There's really something to this. Any way I can help, let me know. And that started a friendship. And Les is in the movie. And Les, we met him on location. And the story was about a small child, a 2-year-old child, that disappeared in the wilderness in Oregon. And they were gone, I think, for 20 hours, and they were found 2 mountain ranges away, 12 miles away. And 80%, 90% of that time was in darkness. And so Les said, hey, let's just crew with me, and let's see if I can replicate what this kid did. And I don't know, Tyler, you saw it, so what do you think of those results?
Well, I mean, it's well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, you go back and you retrace the footsteps of some of these disappearances, and you find out that God, it's just it can't be reconstructed. You know, there's something that happens here, some sort of intervention, whatever you want to call it, that can't be reproduced by a film crew. And again, that adds to just the spookiness of it. You know, it's just in children especially, because the film does focus specifically on the children, and it's amazing to me the number of children that go missing every year in these national parks. You know, just 1 second standing right next to their parents, the next second parents look back, kid's gone. I think there was one case that I can't think of his name, but a little boy and his family were walking a ways. The father asked his son to run back to the cabin to get shoes on because there was poison ivy around. The little boy ran back to the cabin, which was just a few feet away. Little boy was never seen again. Little boy was never found again. And it's just, yeah, you think, well, how far could a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old get? And they're never seen again in many instances. And it's just, again, I sit here and I want to start speculating. I want to start throwing out theories again, but I just don't know. Now let me ask you this, because there are also many reappearances of people. Isn't that right? And, one of the main questions I have is, have you ever spoke with any of the few cases where people have been found alive, I spoke with one person who knew someone who went missing, and when they came back out, they had no recollection of what had happened to them. They lost time, is the way they described it. In your research, is it a large percentage of people that are ever found, or the majority just never seen again?
Well, first of all, certain area you don't want to replicate somebody else's work, and you don't want to waste a lot of time. So we went out and we contacted several missing persons organizations, and we explained to them what we were going to do. And we said, hey, we don't want to step on the landmines like you probably have when you started. Help us out. And these groups uniformly said, well, if you're going to write a book about the disappearance, then don't we and talk to the victims, because they'll feel as though they're being re-victimized a second time and you're taking advantage of them. So we took that advice. But if people proactively contact us, that's an entirely different matter, and that has happened a lot. And just like you said, the people that do return, the vast majority don't have any recollection of what happened, how they got point to point, where they were, how they managed to do it. And that is a very odd thing, because just like you said, missing time, why didn't that, how did that happen, and why did it happen in that way? Now, understanding that that is a major life ordeal, and your mind does a lot of things to protect yourself moving forward. Maybe that's a protection mechanism. Maybe there's something else at play that we don't understand, but it is an odd scenario.
Right. You know, it's amazing to me the amount of pushback that you've gotten, and one of the biggest questions from my viewers is, in your time making this film or writing your books, have you ever personally been threatened or contacted by people who said, you know what, stop what you're doing, stop looking into this, or something bad's going to happen?
I have a lot of friends that are in different facets of paranormal or unusual research. And every once in a while, I'll hear about, their house got broken into, they got threatened, blah, blah, blah. I've only had two things happen to me. About 3 years ago, somebody through an email threatened to kill me. I turned it over to the police. They found the guy in LA. Within the last 6 months, somebody threatened me via Facebook. That guy was out of Idaho. I'm not afraid of those kind of threats. And honestly, I don't take a lot of them super seriously. But when they mention, that they think they know where I live, and I'm afraid for my family members more than I'm afraid for me. But anything that's really been concrete or told me not to do the research, no, it's been other kind of things that people didn't like. And, there's that group like you talked about out there, the skeptics. And I think that they're really concerned about this research because they know that when the people go out there and read it or listen to it, that it's really solid, and there are no holes that you can punch into it if you've really read the research.
Right. And that's what I love about it. There's just it's one of the topics that has so much data behind it, so many reports, that one can only come to one conclusion, and that something is not going right here. And I think you portrayed that beautifully in the film, which, by the way, guys, is now available. It's called The Missing 411. Dave, how has the reception been since the film has come out?
So the Orchard, they were kind of late into the game in the such that I only knew about them 3 months ago, and they happened to see the movie from one of the investigative journalists that had an early look at it. And so one of their executives got a hold of us, and we're blown away that a huge organization would take us on. But they've really helped us get into this position to meet people just like you. But the reception has been overwhelming. I mean, just within the last 24 hours, the film has zoomed up to number 3 on downloaded docs on iTunes, and I don't think anybody thought it was ever going to get that far. And
Congratulations. Yeah, that is an awesome feat. It truly is.
That shocked us. And I think that, again, the people out there that, especially if you have children or you're a young adult and you're thinking about having kids, I think that the movie will really resonate. And people who love the outdoors. There's a lot of, we filmed it in 4K. It's available in HD. It's one of those things that we did because we wanted to bring home that nature look that we wanted in the film, and portray the locations where these people disappeared adequately and truthfully. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been very blessed that these guys have done a great job.
Well, I can't tell you how happy I am for you. And, I mean, it's obvious why people love your books, are going to love your film if they haven't seen it yet. You're obviously someone who is very passionate about the work he does. I mean, honestly, you have been in law enforcement. Your candor, your intelligence on the matter is obvious. You know what you're talking about. I think people can hear it in your voice that this isn't just some you're not one of these authors out there who just picks a topic and wants to write a bunch of books and make some money and maybe get a little bit of fame and then retire on. It's obvious that you care about this the same way I care about what I'm doing here on the channel. It's very serious to me, and it's a passion. And the Missing 411 film, which, by the way, guys, it's on iTunes, it's on Amazon. I'll put the links to it down in the video description. It's available, all right? And I want my viewers to know that if there is ever one film that you need to see, it's The Missing 411, a film that truly will creep you out, and it will truly make you think. And especially for the skeptics out there, I ask you to see this film and then come back to me, come back to the video here and post in the comments and honestly tell us what you think is going on, and I highly doubt you'll be able to come to some conclusion that's going to make you feel all warm inside, especially having seen this film and read the books. So I want to give a big, warm, special thanks to Dave for coming on today. Mr. Paulides, I want to thank you, and I hope that one day soon you will be back with us, and I just want to, again, congratulate you on your new film.
Hey, Tyler, anytime, and I appreciate the interest in the topic. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it, guys. Great interview, awesome guy to talk with, and I want you all to be sure to check out Mr. Paulides' new film. It's called Missing 411, and you can get it and watch it on Amazon, iTunes, virtually any online video streaming service. Check it out. It's one of the best films I have ever seen. Check out his books, the Missing 411 series. You will be glued to the pages, I promise you that. And also be sure to follow Mr. Paulides on Twitter. All of that info I will also put down in the video description. That way you can get further updates on new projects he is working on. So thank you all for stopping by today and watching this interview. Let me know what you guys think down below, and stay tuned because I've got a lot more coming, and I will see you guys all back in just a bit.